Hello, 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 and welcome to another live windsurf coaching. It is October 13th. We are charging into the fall. I'm on Maui. The Aloha Classic starts in less than 10 days, I think. I'm not sure if it starts on the 21st or the 23rd, but it's somewhere around there. So it's coming up under 2 weeks to go for the start of the Aloha Classic, which will be the last World Cup of the season and the only World Cup that I'm competing in this year. This is the first year in a long time that I haven't done the full tour. So I started doing most of the tour when I was 15, and then I took a break. I took a few different breaks at certain points in my career. I took a few years to focus on the AWT/IWT when that was getting going in the beginning, and I had a few breaks and then returns to the World Cup. But this is, yeah, one of the first year without doing it, but I will still compete in the Aloha, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll have a terrible seating because I don't have any ranking from other events, but I'm looking forward to it. And I wonder, for you guys in the chat, do you have the opportunities to compete in local events? And if you do, is that something that you take advantage of uh, or not? And why do you do it and why do you not do it? I think that competitions can be really fun and motivating for your windsurfing. There are a lot of good amateur competitions that happen around Europe, around the world, and they can be a lot of fun. They can also not be a lot of fun. I think it's important to come to them with the right attitude and with the right expectations. And I think a good expectation is to go into it uh, wanting to try something new, to challenge yourself, to see what you can do under pressure, and to have fun. All right, we've got some of you guys showing up in the chat. Let's check that out, and then we'll get into the Facebook group. We got Jorg said 4 sessions, lots of shove it training. Awesome. Jorg is in the shove it course on windsurfingmasterclass.com, and yeah, we've got some people already landing shove its from that course, which is awesome. We got Axel as well in the chat. Dom, hello, Dom. All right, let's get the Facebook group loaded up and dive right into it. All right. If you're joining us, say hi in the chat. Did you sail this week? And have you done any local competitions? Do you have interest in doing amateur local competitions? I am curious. All right, we got Matt in the chat. No win this week. Caroline as well. Hello. Owen, moin. Ragnar had a side offshore session on Friday. Wow, how often does that happen in Sweden? That sounds quite rare. All right, we're going to get into the Facebook posts. You guys know the drill. You can interrupt me with any questions, comments, concerns, all of the above. All right, first up, we have a post from Jeff, posted 4 minutes ago, and it's his last day on Maui today. So I've seen Jeff down at Hokipa, and he's been charging, and I take credit for it, or at least the Facebook group, I think, has helped. Jeff has been charging. I love seeing these high fives, these off the lips, these bottom turns. Jeff has been killing it. So way to go. Axel in the chat says, never did a competition, would probably have to learn to jump first. Yeah, that sounds good. There are some wave riding only events as well. Jan Thomas says, another microwave at 66. Wishes the wave was bigger and the filming clearer, but he likes how he spends a bit less time in front of the wave compared to what he used to do. And he sort of changed his position with the sail from tipping it into the turn to throwing himself to the inside of the turn. All right, let's check the video. Let's go. Let's make it big, and check it out. Okay, so Yeah, there's definitely a clear transition in the sail. And the wave is small, but it's not too small. I would like to see, if you have the footage, the completion of that top turn. Uh, that would be really interesting for me to see, is how this top turn finishes, because the footage cuts off early. If you have someone who is filming you, a good note for them is to say, please don't edit in the camera. It's better to have a little bit before and a little bit after that's extra, in case I need it. So that can be helpful for someone who's filming you, because sometimes people, when they're filming, they cut the footage too early, because they're trying to edit in the camera, and leave the editing for the editing. Um, yeah, I mean, this looks like a fun little wave ride, and looks great. If you want to work on something, I mean, so there's a certain style that you're going for with this bottom turn, where you're doing the really heavy over sheet and then pushing the sail out and leaning into the turn. And there's a certain style to this. I think it's kind of stylish, and it looks interesting. Functionally, it's not as good as getting the body over the center line of the board earlier, because when you're doing this hard sheet in, almost like a laydown jibe, your body is bowed the other way to make that work, right? You can see that your lower body is pushed forward, but your upper body is back. So you're bowed the other way. So sort of leaning towards the cutback rail. And what we really want to do is get our hips bent and our head down, butt out, so that we're getting over that bottom chin rail to help engage the turn. And now there's a lot of discussion in the group about sheeting in the bottom turn. Sheeting in the bottom turn can be really useful, but here it's actually getting in the way. So if you just jam out the sail, so you do a little sheet in here maybe to get some speed, but then from this point on, you're pushing the clue out. That will give you space to get your body over the center line. You'll do a much tighter bottom turn, and you'll be much more on the rail, which then will be easier to do a carving cutback. And so it's gonna be different, because it's not just learning, it's also unlearning. And whenever you're unlearning as well as learning, it's a much harder process. But if you just forget about sheeting in and just sheet out aggressively, you'll be able to get your body over the center line, because this body position, the body mechanics of this position, are not helping the board carve in the bottom turn, right? It's just the wrong way, and the board is being pulled downwind because you're sheeting in the sail, but that's not how we want to get the board to initiate the curve. We want to do it with the body, and then it will be a much harder curve. But that said, I mean, this looks nice. There's a certain style to this kind of bottom turn, and so if that's what you're going for rather than the functionality, then that's great. All right, we got Harold in the chat. Hello. We got Rasmus as well. He had 3 times sailing this week. Wow. We got Andre Boda as well in Belize with no wind. All right, so what are the questions for this week? Mark says, speed is the foundation of the bottom turn, yet it is not straightforward getting it going into the bottom turn. So my question is, what makes it so difficult to achieve the speed like the pros? And what are the typical mistakes? This is a great question. I love this question. Typical mistake. So starting too low on the wave. Speed is essential to wave riding. Starting high on the wave, so the very top of the wave, is really helpful. Not starting the bottom turn at the bottom of the wave. So some people, they'll be high on the wave, but then they'll come down the wave and then start going into the bottom turn process. But if you think about staying high on the wave, coming down, and then going into the bottom turn while you're still on the face of the wave, that will help you keep speed, because you're still connected to the power source of the wave. That's a really big one. Second is making sure that you're starting on a power source of the wave. And so we talk about where the waves have power. You want to make sure you're starting at a power source and going to a power source, so that you're connected to the energy of the wave throughout the turn. Starting on a power source is really important, but you also want to make sure that you're going to a power source. So what does a power source look like? That's a part of the wave that has more power. So it's often a part of the wave that is steeper and smoother because there's more energy there, there's more surface tension, pulling the water steep and smooth. Maybe it's actually higher on the wave. That's often the case, but not always the case, where it's higher. So you're looking for the wave is not a flat line. It's got a shape to its top. You want to be on one of the apexes of the wave normally to get the most speed. So position is incredibly important for speed. Next is active movements. And so if you're pumping to get speed, you're going to get a lot more speed than if you're not pumping. And so being aware of how you can get speed by pumping. You can pump on the fins, you can pump on the sail. And it's, I think, a good habit to get into doing at least 1 or 2 pumps before you go into your bottom turn, staying high on the wave. So you don't want to pump once you're down on the bottom of the wave. You stay high on the wave, pumping, and then you go into the bottom turn. You've got more speed. You can pump the fins. You just do that by just pushing on the fins. You can pull the sail. But what you want to make sure is that those pumps are translating into speed. One of the things that can happen is that if you're just moving the sail around, you're not actually generating more speed. So you want to feel that acceleration happening. And then the last point that I'll bring up is board position on the wave. And so if you're going to go down the line, you want to make sure that your board is pointed at least perpendicular with the wave, and it could even be already pointing down the line before you start. I see a lot of people starting, they want to go down the line, but they start pointing upwind. They're pointing up the line. And then they come down the wave and they start doing that first quarter turn, and then they're losing speed going into the bottom turn. And that is a losing speed way to turn. And so if we want to be increasing our speed, we want to have the board lined up more with the power of the wave and also the direction of our turn, because that will just help keep the speed and increase the speed as well. So hopefully that makes sense. This is a really important question and important topic. And we talked about a lot of different things that you can do to implement on your own. And what I recommend is, I gave a long list about how you're setting up power sources, pumping, staying high on the wave, the direction of the board. Write all of those down. And when you go for your next wave sailing section, choose one of them to focus on. It's too many to think about if you're thinking about all of them at once, but it's important to write them down so you don't forget them. And then in your next session, choose one, focus on that, see how it helps. All right, we got a question from Andre. He says, hey, has anyone here ever windsurfed Central America? Interesting question. We are currently doing a Panamericana trip in our camper van, and I always love to find windsurfing people and good conditions along the way. For the last countries, Canada, USA, and Mexico, there was a lot of information about wind sports, and there are a lot of amazing wave sailing spots in South America. But the only thing I heard so far about Central America is there's more or less no wind. Interesting. Mostly all of these countries, this long list, have fantastic surf conditions. So I was thinking there might be a chance to score a lucky day of windsurfing. Does anyone know? Interesting question. I really don't know. Mexico gets great windsurfing, but once we get south of Mexico, I'm not sure. So we got a response from Tom. So Tom says, let's check all comments. So Tom says, surfing is great in El Salvador, but not often windy enough. He gives a lot of information here in different spots. This is pretty cool. So he gives a pretty good list of information. Nicaragua, Ecuador. This is a great resource here from Tom. Thank you, Tom, for contributing this. All right, let's see what some of the other answers are. So Axel contributes some spots from the World Windsurf Guide. Okay, so there's a little bit of information. Andre, what I would love from you is if you can provide us some information. you are the explorer here, figuring out what works, when it works, how it works, if it works. So I would love you to take some great notes and let us know. So you've got some good information, some starting points from Tom and from Axel, but let us know. I don't have experience with any of these countries, and I think it would be really interesting to hear about it. So if you can take some notes and do a post about your experience, maybe a few posts as you go. Post as you go is easier than doing it all at the end. I would really appreciate that. And I think the other people in the group will as well. All right, we got Max in the chat says he had a cold session yesterday. Could have been on a 3 meter to a 6.7. Oof, sounds gusty. And cross shore port tack to onshore port tack. Crazy. Yeah, cool, Andre. I'm really looking forward to seeing the report. All right, Chris. Chris is back on the water after a long spell with poor conditions, and he was able to try a few forwards again. He's getting braver and going higher and faster, but still seems to be hugging the sail and not getting the front arm straight enough, and also seems to struggle keeping his front leg straight and his back leg tucked. The board seems to stay flat rather than on its side during the rotation. One thing he found today, as he was getting further around, is that he's landing on the tail. All right, and with the nose of the board up in the air. All right, let's check this out. Let's check this out. Let's see. Let's make this big, and let's check this out. Big, big, big. Let's go bigger. Big as we can go. Full screen. All right, here we go. Chris taking off. So you're getting a lot of angle on the takeoff with the board, which could be good, could be bad. This is maybe because you're thinking about driving the board downwind, which is a good thing to do. But that might be screwing up your rotation a little bit. So the first thing that I see that you could try, and I'm not saying that this is 100% going to make a difference. It's difficult to see with these camera angles, and there is some amount of pushing the board downwind that you do definitely want to do. So take this with a grain of salt. But what I do notice is that you go from being on your heel, we can see it, like there's a lot of pressure on that front foot that's changing as you're taking off. Like it's really pulling up. And then the board is really looks like it's going on its toe side rail. This could be the camera angle. Maybe the board is flat. But before we get into any of the other dynamics of the loop, I think this is going to make a big difference for you. Now, like I said, huge grain of salt, right? With this angle, I can't see everything. There might be other stuff going on, okay? But you want to push off of the ramp. You want to think of exploding off of the ramp. So you don't want to be pulling off of the ramp. You want to be pushing off of the ramp. I'll say that again. You don't want to be pulling off of the ramp. You want to be pushing off of the ramp. If you pull off of the ramp, you're going to get less height, less explosion, less boost. So you want to be pushing. An easy way to think about getting height, whether you're doing a forward or any other jump, aerial, wave 360, is if you're going from small to standing up. And you don't even have to think about jumping or pushing, because sometimes if you think about doing an explosive jump, that actually disrupts the board, and you want to keep the board pressed firmly and smoothly on the surface of the water, because if it's like bouncing around, you're not going to get a good pop either. So you want to keep that constant pressure on the water, but you go small and then you're standing up, so you're getting bigger, taller as you're going off the ramp. And only once you're fully in the air do you suck everything up. So you're going from small to tall to ball. But the ball only happens when you're up in the air. Otherwise, you're not getting as much pop as you could. The second thing is you want to keep that board flat. You want to keep the board on the surface of the water, pressed firmly and smoothly on the surface of the water, flat. You don't want it going side to side because you're not going to get as good of a takeoff. It could be that what's happening here is that the board isn't going as radically to the side. It's more that you are going really radically out to the side, and that's what looks like it from this angle. But anyway, those two things about the takeoff are going to make a huge difference for your jumps. So making sure that you're pushing firmly and smoothly on the surface of the water, and then you're low, crouch down, and then standing up tall as you're going off the ramp. And then only once you're in the air do you start sucking up. So I can tell with your foot that you're already really pulling that front foot up, and you can be pushing still off of it at that moment. And then here we start sucking up. Pretty nice rotation. You're getting very horizontal. It doesn't look like a scary radical rotation. A little bit more height will make this a lot easier. So you're hitting the nose of the board. So the nose of the board hits right there, and that will screw up the rotation just a little bit, which could be the difference between landing and sailing away and getting caught like you are. Let's go through it one more time and see if there's anything else that we can pick out here. So the hand goes back, going up the ramp. You get some extension in the arms coming up. So you are going into the wind with your body as well as the sail. Another thing to think about is to keep your body upright. So your body's upright and the sail is going into the wind, but the body stays upright. And then the last point is we want to get a pretty hard push with that front arm. And so it looks like you're doing quite a bit of pulling with both hands. And the way I like to think about it is more of a twisting, like you're have a big threaded bolt with a handle that extends out on either side, and you're trying to turn that big bolts like you work on an oil rig. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos of people working on oil rigs or something, and they've got these big drills and they have one hand on either side of a bar or a handle that goes across a bolt, and they're trying to screw it or open it up. And so it's the same motion with the forward. This hand is pulling in hard and this hand is pushing hard, and the center of your rotation is between those hands. And so that's maybe a way to think about it. So rather than thinking about you pulling with both hands, you're trying to get that spin. And so you're using both hands to help you. The center of the rotation is between those hands. And so you're pushing with the front hand, pulling with the back hand on that handle. And in the center of the handle is a big drill or bolt or bit or something. So anyway, so hopefully that helps with the 4 words. We got Jeff in the chat. We already checked your pictures. Awesome, awesome, awesome progress. Andre says, if anyone knows people living in Central America, please feel free to write him. It's always good to meet local people. Cool. All right, let's keep charging. Whoa, we're caught up. We are caught up. That was a short week. Some short, but all of these posts were really good. And there's a lot of interesting discussion. We talked about Jeff's post. We talked about the bottom turn with Jan Thomas. We talked about Mark's question here about getting speed on the wave. We talked about a little bit about Central America. And then finally about the forward loops. I would like all of you, your homework is to post a question in the group. And with these weeks where we're not getting a lot of posts, like we had a lot last week, so it changes week to week. But it means that there's more time for me or anyone else to answer the questions that you have. So I would really take advantage of, in the way that it works, there's sort of like peaks and valleys of people posting. And if we're in a valley now, take advantage of that because then you'll get more attention from me and from the rest of the group. So now is a great time to post a question, a video, a comment, concern, a worry, something that you've been meaning to ask, but you're embarrassed to ask, it's a great place to start, because those questions, most people are actually probably thinking them. Like if it's something about which direction should the footstraps go on the board or something like that. Uh, so that's your homework. Come up with a question, post it in the group or a photo or a video. And I look forward to seeing you next week, Sunday. I've got some work to do, and then I will be going down to the beach myself. The waves are up, the wind is up. I'm looking forward to another Maui session. I should have some footage to share with you guys at some point as well. All right, take care. Have a good windy week. I will see you next week, Sunday.